Good evening, everyone. Mon nom est Émilie Retailleau, je suis conservatrice publique au CCA. Donc, bienvenue ce soir à l'occasion de cette soirée de célébration des recherches sur le travail et l'archive d'Amancio Williams, architecte argentin. Avec ce soir donc une conférence de l'historien de l'architecture argentin Luis Müller et le lancement de notre publication AP205 Amancio Williams Readings the Archive. Pour commencer cet événement, je voudrais tout d'abord reconnaître que les peuples autochtones de Ganyenguehaga, de Ganawage, Ganasadage et Aguasasne ont des connexions de longue date avec Tiohtià:ke, Muñang, Montréal. Leurs ancêtres, tout comme ceux des communautés Wendat, Anishinaabe et Abenaki, vivaient sur ces terres bien avant l'arrivée des colons. Aujourd'hui encore, l'île abrite de nombreuses personnes issues des Premières Nations, Inuits et peuples métis. Ces communautés continuent de subir la remise en cause de leurs droits et l'érosion de leur territoire traditionnel. Le CCA étant établi sur des territoires qui n'ont jamais été cédés par leur population autochtone, nous reconnaissons donc les racines coloniales de notre institution et nous nous engageons à favoriser des relations inclusives et positives avec les nations autochtones de Tiohtià:ke, Muñang, Montréal. Et d'ailleurs, notre engagement comprend des programmes publics, des bourses de recherche et création, des collaborations qui visent à créer une reconnaissance territoriale vivante qui fournira un soutien et des ressources à long terme aux communautés et aux chercheurs autochtones. Si vous voulez en savoir plus, je vous invite aussi à aller consulter notre site internet. Tonight's event is also part of a wider CCA strategy to use our archive holdings to redefine the role of architecture today. The research carried out since the arrival of the archive of Amancio Williams at the CCA in 2020, thanks to the generous donation of the family and the trust that they had towards the CCA. So this research has taken the form of a trilogy of exhibitions in our octagonal room called Out of the Box Amancio Williams, which took place between June 2023 and May 2024. Successively curated by Studio Muoto, a French architectural duo, Claudia Schmidt, an Argentinian architectural historian, and Peso von Elrichhausen, a Chilean architectural duo. Together, they have presented new and expanding understanding of Williams' work and situated the social, material, and political dimensions of his practice within contemporary architecture discourse. This same research is also the subject of the CCA publication, co-edited with Spector Books, which we are also celebrating this evening in the bookstore, AP205 Amancio Williams Readings of the Archive, in the presence of the graphic designer Matthias Kreutzer from Our Polite Society and Alexandra Pereira Edwards, CCA editor, after the lecture. So tonight, we are also honored to welcome architectural historian Luis Müller to continue further the understanding of the work of Amancio Williams and to understand its continuing relevance today. Luis Müller, whose doctoral thesis entitled Amancio Williams' Invention as a Project, is professor of architectural history and director of the Master of Architecture program at the Facultad de Arquitectura, Diseño y Urbanismo, Universidad Nacional del Litoral, Santa Fe, Argentina. His research focuses on the modernization of architecture in Argentina and Latin America. His work has been widely published in Argentina and internationally. He is also a guest lecturer at the Universidad Torquato di Tella, Buenos Aires, Argentina. This event tonight will be filmed. The lecture will be presented in English, and you will be invited to ask questions in French or in English at the end of it, before we all go to the bookstore. So please join me in welcoming Luis Müller.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Millie, for the presentation. First of all, I would like to thank the CCA for this invitation, which allows me to visit this fantastic place, especially those who have assisted me included his director, Giovanna Borassi, and the entire team, particularly Emily Recleo, Tatiana Mihailov, Alison Drin, Pedro Barbacciano, Sophie Murphy, Martin De Blete. Maybe I'm forgetting someone, I'm sorry. The archive staff team, Veronica, Jean-Francois, and Gwen Mayhew. Before I begin, I would like to clarify that my English is not fluent, so I will read from a text I prepared from this presentation. If you have any questions afterward, please speak slowly. I will have assistants to help me respond. My doctoral thesis focused on the work and thought of Amancio Williams. I would not have been able to complete it without access to the materials in his archive, which I visited whenever I could over nearly a decade while the materials were still in Argentina. The thesis will be published as a book next year, I hope, and I must also thank the CCA for granting permission to reproduce images from its catalog. Today, we are here to celebrate the publication of another book about Amancio Williams. So I will attempt to provide you with an overview of his work, which I hope will begin to garner the recognition it deserves, not only among researchers worldwide, but also among a broader audience interested in architectural creation. Amancio Williams engaged in an intense reflection on architecture, which he conveyed not so much through writings, but through explorations, addressing each project as a new problem. Interpreting his creative process presents a challenge. It involves asking questions of the documents in his archive. His thoughts are reflected in projects, proposals, inquiries, and investigations. However, the realization of his work proved elusive, and the actual building of his build-over is limited. Where do his uniqueness and relevance lie? Why has his work captivated architects, and what can it convey to new generations? One possible answer can be articulated by appreciating the originality of his propositions, his obsession with perfection, the proving of the limits of the discipline, and his continuous invention, essentially a set of principles that allowed him to view each opportunity as a challenge to propose unique and transformative solutions. The history of modern architecture has been written based on the uniqueness of highly creative architects, and it is within this framework that Williams sought to position himself, through a constant experimentation that set him apart from the generic architectures of the international style, and through his personal connections with a broad network of international references. This also implies recognizing that he was not an isolated figure. On the contrary, he was deeply interconnected. However, his creative profile was not of the artistic avant-garde, characterized by creativity from nothing, but rather that of technical creativity, which involves knowledge and experience. This approach, oriented toward active engagement with reality to achieve its transformation through technical contributions, is encapsulated in Amancio Williams' mindset with one word: invention. In his own terms, this is reflected in the following quote: "To create our era for the goodness in relation to form involves invention and discovery in correct relation to matter and technique." These were his guiding principles, experimentation, and the relationship between matter and technique to give his work a humanistic purpose with a sense of permanence. He was perhaps one of the most complex figures in the architectural culture of his time. He practiced and disseminated modern architecture as a form of activism, just as he engaged with the same commitment in other contemporary expressions, such as art and design. He began with 3 years of studies in engineering, followed by an equal number of years in architecture. Between these academic experiences, he had a direct relationship with the world of aviation and practiced as a pilot, experiences that undoubtedly established for him a particular point of view and a qualified platform to develop a heightened technological consciousness as an architect. From that point on, all his work would be marked by a particular exploratory and free method, as well as an incessant search for innovative solutions. The years from the early 1940s to the mid-1950s defined and condensed the basic codes of his architecture and the shaping of his life project. This period encapsulated many of the conditions that would be present throughout Williams's career, concentrated in a fecundity and productivity that would be difficult to replicate. As often occurs, his discoveries and definitions will remain as latent layers, re-emerging repeatedly in the future with some themes and issues that began early on continuing to surface from time to time, renewed, reinterpreted, or self-replicating. The peculiarity of Williams is that he would insist on these themes in a recurring manner, almost indifferent to the transformations that architecture undergoes in terms of epochal architectural ages. What follows, without intending to cover everything, is an exploration of a small set of representative works. Housing in space. The Commission for Affordable Housing on a narrow side led to an exploration that resulted in an organization distinct from conventional models. Through a staggered design, the roof of one dwelling becomes the patio terrace of the next, providing an open space with full access to light and air. This procedure would become a common practice in the Williams studio, using a theme as an excuse for analysis and through an investigative process with the workshop functioning as a laboratory of ideas, he arrived at innovative solutions. Though not executed at the time, the project was revisited decades later as the basis of proposing a larger complex. House over the Stream in the city of Mar del Plata. This is the work earned Amancio Williams significant international prestige. It was a summer house for his family, where his father, the renowned musician Alberto Williams, could compose amid nature and in the seaside city of Mar del Plata. Set in a large park traversed by a stream, the decision made with Delfina Galvez, his wife and also an architect, was to consider a bridge-like structure integrated into the house, creating a composition where everything behaves as a single entity, structural, material, formal, and conceptual. This resulted in a total synthesis, The idea can be summarized in just a few strokes, even a gesture. As Amancio Williams expressed, this house was primarily conceived as a form in space that didn't negate nature. The form is, at the same time, in its entirety, structure. Its significance is immense, as it placed Williams and Argentinian architecture on the international stage. Hall for plastic and sound performances in space. This project arose from inquiries in the field of acoustics, beginning with an idea generated in a competition for a concert hall. While he was in his final year of architectural studies, Williams continued to explore a radical concept, the notion of a space that could ensure identical sound perception in quality and volume for all spectators. As an autonomous object, it was envisioned to be located in various settings, such as a park or even on the Rio de la Plata River. This project received the gold medal at the 1958 International Exposition in Brussels. Airport for the city of Buenos Aires. In this design, the airport is projected at a significant height above over the water's surface over the Rio de la Plata River. Could be considered in various positions and configurations, and the design allowed mixed operation at different levels for both airplanes and seaplanes without obstructing smaller river navigation. Furthermore, it already accounts for extended runways, anticipating the development of jet aircraft through the turbines developed during the war. Suspended office building. The commission for an office building resulted in one of the projects where Williams's inventiveness reached its peak. The proposal represents a complete break from the urban context, both in terms of the urban fabric and architectural expression. The building was conceived as an isolated object, a tower detached from the party walls and set back from the corner facade lines, rising more than 115 meters. The structural solution was also radical. A large exposed reinforced concrete structure from which the office floors, also resolved with steel, would hang from metal rods. By relocating the structure to the exterior of the building, the facade and internal surfaces were freed up to provide flexible uses for the open floors. 3 hospitals for the province of Corrientes. During the first term of President Juan Perón, Amancio Williams had an extraordinary opportunity. Included in a comprehensive construction program for the national health system, he was commissioned to design 3 hospitals in the province of Corrientes. He visited and photographed the rural areas, relatively isolated and with limited resources, where the hospitals were supposed to be. In a subtropical climate with strong sunlight and intense rainfalls. In these circumstances, he keenly appreciated the means employed in traditional architecture to provide shelter from such conditions, the galleries. The projects for these hospitals which in the archive include over 700 plans ranging from sketches and preliminary drawings to final construction plans, were not realized due to political issues within the government. Nevertheless, they represent one of the highest points of Amancio Williams' creativity. The organization was systematic. Williams didn't design 3 independent hospitals, but rather a system of hospitals that could be replicated. Another important aspect was the solution for achieving adequate climate control. His proposal was to incorporate a high roof, consequently creating an artificial forest providing shade. The structural element was a piece he called a shell bolt, a double carved reinforced concrete shell, and the thin shell, 5 centimeters thick at the edges, achieved resistance through its forms. And even before scientific methods for its calculation were available, approximations were made using scale models and load tests. The shell became an element that, as we'll see, gained autonomy and ultimately became a hallmark with which Williams is identified. The high roofs. Elevated roofs already caught his attention. In 1939, while still a student, he devised the possibility of a system of prefabricated roofs that could be mounted on columns using cranes. Originally created for the hospitals, the shell bolt was used in projects of different periods and functions: schools, religious buildings, commercial spaces, houses, monuments, and an exhibition stand built in 1966 that was regrettably demolished afterward. By the year 2000, 2 examples were built along the Rio de la Plata River coast in homage to the architect, based on a design he had conceived to honor his father. 10 years later, in the city of Santa Fe, where I live, with the permission of the Williams family, the government built a cultural center mounted on abandoned industrial structures, featuring a public plaza partially covered by 13 of these shell bolts. Then, in these last 2 cases, the works were reproduced even in the absence of their author, who had long since passed away. Another type of high roofs, which we can refer to as flat, aligns with the idea outlined in 1939. It was used in a factory and an ecumenical monument intended to be placed in the city of Berlin. The theme of high roofs has been one of the enduring motifs throughout Amancio Williams' trajectory. Amancio Williams developed a wide and intricate network of relationships. In Buenos Aires, although he didn't formally and institutionally engage in teaching, he had a studio that became a crucial place for students and young architects to enhance their training and pursue the paths of modernity, given that education at the school was still largely academic. Consequently, young individuals who would later become prominent names in Argentine architecture circulated through his studio, receiving instruction and advice from Williams, while also interacting with the foreign personality who visited him. It was also common to receive requests from foreign architects wishing to work with him, as evidenced by letters found in the archive. Artists frequently participated in his studio, particularly from the Concrete Art Invention Group, an important avant-garde aesthetic movement founded in 1945. Between them, Tomás Maldonado, who later became the director of the HFG, Hochschule für Gestaltung in Ulm, Germany, and Alfredo Lito. While Williams quickly and firmly established his international prestige, with his works appearing in the most renowned publications, it's important to note his active role in the ongoing dissemination of ideas and works of modern architecture. He undertook tasks of management and promotion that contributed to Argentine architecture achieving a prominent and recognized place in the world. He was an intense promoter of culture in general and of architecture in particular. His external network of relationships had its counterpart within the local architectural culture. He engaged with his colleagues by participating in projects and fostering friendships and collaborations in promoting the values of modern architecture. In 1949, he organized the exhibition Architecture and Urbanism of Our Time in Buenos Aires, which featured works donated and sent by prominent European architects like Marcel Lotz, Ernesto Rogers, Paul Nelson, Le Corbusier, and Pierre Garnered, among others. With a catalogue designed by Tomás Maldonado, the exhibition aimed to not only to showcasing recent European production, but also at activation and strengthening cultural debate within the Argentine architectural community. Similarly, he had an active, though not visible, role in the editorial management of the magazine La Arquitectura de Hoy, Today's Architecture, the Spanish version of the French magazine L'Architecture d'aujourd'hui, published in Buenos Aires for Latin America, which included examples from the region. André Bloch, the French director of the magazine, and Williams formed a strong friendship, and the Argentine architects contributed extensively. He invited the best architects from Brazil, Chile, Uruguay, and Argentina to publish and promote their works, and intervened to define the role of the editorial coordination. Delfina Galvez performed translations and corrections. Anyway, Amancio Williams doesn't appear in the magazine credits, only on the pages where their works were widely published. The correspondence reflects his numerous references, contacts, and interests. Of course, he communicated with the best architects in Argentina to coordinate and advocate for the promotion of modern architecture. Among the foreign figures with whom he maintained fluid communication were the Italian engineer Pierluigi Nervi, whom was consulted regarding the structures, the airport, and the shell bolts, Alberto Sartoris, who published the works from Williams's early period in his books, Siegfried Gideon. Williams represented Argentina at the SIAM from the 1940 to 1951. Clive Entwistle, the English architect who not only lived in Buenos Aires for a time collaborating in Williams's studio, but also proposed using his concert hall for two projects in England, the Civic Centre in Aycliffe and in Crescent Park, London. And Reginald Malcolmson, whom Williams met in 1955 during his trip to the United States for an exhibition and lectures, developing a friendship based on mutual collaboration from that point on. Williams, impressed by the Metro Linear City project that Malcolmson was developing, later dedicated the final years of his life to perfecting a linear city project he called the City Humanity Needs, for which he received assistance from Malcolmson and his students at the Illinois Institute of Technology. Now that Williams's archive has been integrated with Malcolmson's materials held at the CCA, it's expected that new knowledge will emerge regarding these projects and the relationship established by these architects who, concerned about the future of cities and humanity itself, experiment with large-scale proposals that were deemed utopians or visionaries in their time. Argentina's delegate at the SIAM, he had an extensive network of contacts with recognized colleagues from various countries, primarily in Europe and the United States. In addition to those mentioned, his correspondence frequently includes letters from Max Bill, George Candelis, Philip Johnson, Oscar Niemeyer, Roberto Paul-Desmarais, Ernesto Rogers, Eduardo Torroja, and many others, reflecting his affinities, interests, and concerns. In 1946, he began to correspond with Le Corbusier through a letter he sent along with images of some of his works. The Swiss architect responded with praise. "You have great talent," he remarked. The following year, he visited him at his atelier in Paris, met his collaborators, and returned with a painting personally dedicated to him by Le Corbusier. Shortly thereafter, he received the highest recognition he could expect from the master, a recommendation to collaborate on the development of the project and oversee the construction of the house commissioned by Dr. Kuruchet from the Swiss architect in the city of La Plata. As a result, Williams established a professional relationship with Le Corbusier in which he did not play a passive role. On the contrary, he took an active part, exchanging ideas and solutions about the project. Various projects succeeded one another, but few were realized. However, he didn't stray from his conviction. In 1961, during the speech he gave upon when he was appointed full member at the Argentinian National Academy of Fine Arts, he expressed, "In culture, there are permanent values. What was once good will continue to be so, invulnerable to changes. The essential quality for permanence is authenticity." In 1968, extraordinary circumstances arose once again when the German government jointly commissioned Walter Gropius and Amancio Williams to design a building for its embassy in Buenos Aires. Williams actively collaborated with the German master, meeting in Buenos Aires and sharing an intense week of work. After several proposals and variations, they arrived at a definitive and remarkable project, which was ultimately stalled due to political issues in the city council, and later the passing of Gropius in 1969 further extinguished hopes of realizing the project. Nevertheless, Williams is one of the few architects who can account among his achievements the collaboration with two of the great masters of modern architecture, Le Corbusier and Walter Gropius. The most notable proposals in the later years of his career were characterized by grand scale. A city intended for installation in Antarctica, a significant design and technical challenge that once again remained on paper due to political issues, and a long-term personal development that Williams considered central to his concerns, referred to by the slogan, "The city humanity needs," a proposal akin to urban utopias consisting of a linear megastructure extending as an elevated ribbon for tens or hundreds of kilometers. It's probable that his fidelity to pure ideas and an almost metaphysical conception of the profession resulted in a professional career that, in concrete terms, was marked more by what was envisioned than by what was built. However, it's also true that this allowed him to sustain an incessant search for the creative arc and invention with a main purpose, in his own words, to harmonize the lives of men. Amancio Williams is regarded in Argentina and Latin America as one of the most important architects of all time, and has attracted the interest of numerous scholars worldwide. The availability of his archive at the CCA will, without a doubt, allow his legacy to expand limitlessly. Then, positioning Williams in new context will enable a reevaluation and reconsideration of his place within the historiographic canon of modern architecture. Thank you very much.